Imagine waking up every single morning knowing that millions of people are counting on you, that every decision you make, every word, every action will ripple through an entire civilization. Now imagine choosing on purpose to be humble, to be kind, to be good. That was Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the ancient world. And what he wrote in secret, in private journals never meant for anyone else's eyes, might be exactly what you need to hear today. Welcome back to Of the Stoics, the channel where ancient philosophy meets modern life. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button now, because what we explore on this channel has the power to genuinely change the way you see the world, and more importantly, yourself. Today we're going deep into one of the most remarkable minds in all of human history, Marcus Aurelius, Roman emperor, philosopher, warrior, and perhaps most surprisingly, a man who struggled with the very same things you struggle with right now. Doubt, frustration, exhaustion. The feeling that life just keeps throwing obstacles in your way, no matter how hard you try. But here's what makes Marcus extraordinary. He didn't let those feelings win. He developed a philosophy, a daily practice for living well, for getting through hard days, for being better not just when conditions were perfect, but especially when they weren't. And today we're going to walk through his most powerful advice piece by piece. Stay with us until the very end, because the final piece of wisdom we share might be the one that hits closest to home. Let's begin. Before we get to the philosophy, we need to understand the man. Because Marcus Aurelius isn't some abstract thinker who sat in an ivory tower and wrote theories about life. He was a man in the arena, literally. Born in 121 AD in Rome, Marcus was adopted into the imperial family and groomed from childhood to one day lead the most powerful empire on earth. And he did. From 161 to 180 AD, Marcus Aurelius served as Roman emperor, and his reign was not easy. He spent much of it on the front lines of brutal military campaigns along the Danube River, fighting Germanic tribes in freezing temperatures, watching men die around him, managing plague, famine, and political betrayal back home in Rome. And yet, in the quiet moments between battles, by lamplight in a military tent, he wrote. Not speeches, not imperial decrees, personal reflections. He called them his meditations, and they were never meant to be published. They were his private journal, a place to hold himself accountable, to remind himself of who he wanted to be, to wrestle honestly with failure, impatience, and pain. He wrote things like, and I'm paraphrasing here, "You wasted this morning. You lost your temper. You were not the man you wanted to be. Tomorrow, try again." Imagine that. The emperor of Rome scolding himself in a private journal for not being good enough. That's not weakness. That's one of the most powerful things a human being can do. And that spirit, that relentless, honest, compassionate self-examination, runs through every piece of advice we're going to share today. Now, here's a question I want you to sit with as we go through this. When was the last time you were truly honest with yourself about who you're becoming? Drop your answer in the comments. Seriously, this community is one of the most thoughtful on YouTube, and I genuinely love reading what you share. Let's talk about mornings, because Marcus Aurelius had a lot to say about how you start your day, and what he said might surprise you. In his Meditations, Marcus wrote something that has echoed through the centuries. When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. Now, wait. Before you think this is some kind of cynicism, keep reading because he continues. No, but I have seen the beauty of good and the ugliness of evil, and have recognized that the wrongdoer has a nature related to my own, not of the same blood or birth, but the same mind and possessing a share of the divine. Let that land for a moment. Marcus wasn't telling himself to expect the worst so he could be bitter about it. He was doing something far more sophisticated. He was preparing himself. Stoics called this practice premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of adversity. The idea is this: if you wake up expecting the world to be perfectly cooperative, patient, and fair, you're setting yourself up to be shattered before noon. But if you wake up having already mentally rehearsed the fact that people will be difficult, that things will go wrong, that the day will have friction in it, then when those things happen, you're not ambushed. You're ready. Think about the last time someone cut you off in traffic, or a coworker sent you a passive-aggressive email, or your plans fell apart at the last minute. What was your reaction? If you're honest, probably some version of frustration, maybe anger, maybe a whole mood that lasted hours. Marcus would say, that's because you were unprepared. Not unprepared for the event, but unprepared within yourself. And here's the deeper point he's making. Even the most difficult person you'll encounter today has a mind, has struggles you can't see, has a nature fundamentally connected to yours. They're not your enemy, they're just human, imperfect as all humans are, including you, including me. What Marcus is offering here is a morning ritual that builds two things simultaneously: resilience by expecting difficulty, and compassion by remembering the humanity in everyone you'll meet. So, here's a practice I want to challenge you to try this week. Before you check your phone tomorrow morning, before the notifications, before the news, before the emails, take 60 seconds. Breathe and say to yourself, today will have hard moments. People will frustrate me. Plans will shift, and I will meet all of it with patience and perspective. Just 60 seconds. Try it for 5 days, then come back and tell me in the comments if it changed anything. I think it will. There's a passage in the Meditations that has become one of the most quoted pieces of Stoic philosophy in the modern world, and honestly, it deserves every bit of the attention it gets. Marcus wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Read that again. The obstacle becomes the way. Not just something you survive, not just something you endure. The very obstacle itself becomes the path forward. This idea is so powerful that author Ryan Holiday wrote an entire best-selling book about it. And you might have heard the title, The Obstacle is the Way. If you haven't read it, link is in the description. Genuinely life-changing. But let's go deeper into what Marcus actually meant, because this isn't just motivational fluff. This is a complete reframe of how to see adversity. Here's the key insight. Most of us experience obstacles as interruptions. Something gets in the way of what we were trying to do, and we treat it as a pause, a problem to solve so we can get back on track. Marcus is saying something completely different. He's saying the obstacle is the track. Think about it this way. When a river meets a boulder, it doesn't stop and complain that the boulder is there. It doesn't wait for someone to move the boulder. It finds a way around it, over it, under it. And in doing so, the river actually grows. It carves new channels. It reshapes the landscape. And we have examples of this everywhere in human history. Thomas Edison failed over 1,000 times before he invented the light bulb. Each failure wasn't a pause in the journey. Each failure was the journey. J.K. Rowling wrote Harry Potter while clinically depressed, a single mother living on welfare. The poverty, the depression, the rejection letters from publishers. Those weren't interruptions to her success. They were the forge that made it meaningful. And on a smaller scale, think about your own life. What's the hardest thing you've been through? Chances are, when you look back on it, that hard thing taught you something no easy road could have. It revealed something about your character. It forced a growth you would never have chosen voluntarily. That's not an accident. That's the obstacle becoming the way. But here's where it gets practical. Because Marcus wasn't just a philosopher. He was an operator. He didn't want pretty ideas. He wanted actionable wisdom. So the next time you hit a wall at work, in a relationship, in your health, in your goals, before you react with frustration, ask yourself 3 questions. 1. What is this obstacle actually teaching me? 2. What strength is this requiring me to develop? 3. If this obstacle is the path, where does it lead? Write those questions down. Put them somewhere you'll see them when things get hard, because they will get hard. And when they do, you'll want this framework ready. Marcus faced wars, plagues, and the weight of an empire. He used every single one of those obstacles as fuel. What could you do with yours? Of all the things Marcus Aurelius wrote about, the subject he returned to again and again with a quiet but unmistakable urgency was time. He wrote, "Confine yourself to the present," and elsewhere, "How many of Fabius, Scipio, Cato have been swallowed up by time, all swept away, and after them, those who buried them?" He was intensely aware, perhaps because he lived surrounded by death on the battlefield, that time was the one resource that could never be recovered. And he wasn't gentle about it. He wrote, "Do not indulge in dreams of having what you have not, but count up the chief of the blessings you do possess, and then thankfully remember how eagerly you would have sought them if they had not been yours." There it is, the the quiet devastation of that sentence. Count up what you have. Remember how desperately you once wanted it. How many of us are living in a life that our past self would have been overjoyed to reach, and we're barely noticing it because we're already looking ahead to the next thing? Marcus would recognize this immediately, and he'd have no patience for it. But, and this is important, his urgency about time was not anxious. It wasn't the frantic energy of someone running out of minutes. It was clear, clarifying. He wasn't saying panic. He was saying wake up, because there's a difference between someone running from death in fear and someone walking through life with full awareness that it is finite, precious, and now. Here's a thought experiment Marcus might offer you. Imagine you found out today that you had exactly 1 more year to live. Comfortable, healthy, just 1 year. What would you stop doing immediately? What would you start doing? Who would you call? What would you say? What project would you finally begin? Now here's the harder question. Why aren't you doing those things right now? Because Marcus's point isn't that you're going to die someday and that's sad. His point is that you are already living in borrowed time every single day, and the only response worthy of that gift is to be present in it, to use it, to not sleepwalk through it. He wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." There's no waiting. There's no when the conditions are right. There's only now and now. We've talked about how Marcus handled the world outside him. Now let's talk about what he considered the most important battlefield of all, the one inside. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." And in another place, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." But perhaps the most powerful concept in all of Stoic philosophy, and the one Marcus returned to most, was the idea of what philosopher Pierre Hadot later called the inner citadel. The citadel, the fortress, is your rational mind, your ability to choose your response, to decide what things mean. And Marcus believed that this citadel was unconquerable. Think about this. Marcus could not control whether barbarians attacked his borders. He could not control whether plague swept through Rome. He could not control whether senators conspired against him, or whether his adoptive son Commodus would one day tear down everything he'd built. He could not control any of that, but he could control his judgment of those events, his response to them, his character in the face of them. And he practiced this daily, deliberately, with the same discipline a soldier trains his body. The Stoics had a concept called the dichotomy of control. It sounds technical, but it's beautifully simple. Some things are in your control, most things are not. In your control, your thoughts, your efforts, your values, your responses. Not in your control, other people's opinions, the economy, your health outcomes, the weather, the past, the future. And here's where most human suffering lives, in the gap between those two categories. We exhaust ourselves trying to control things we fundamentally cannot control, and in doing so, we neglect the one thing we actually can, ourselves. Marcus wrote, and I want you to really hear this, "The first rule is to keep an untroubled spirit. The second is to look things in the face and know them for what they are." An untroubled spirit, not because life is easy, not because nothing is wrong, but because you have built something inside yourself that the world cannot take. I want to ask you something personal here, and I genuinely love your response in the comments. What is one thing you're currently expending enormous energy trying to control that is actually outside your control? It might be what someone thinks of you. It might be how a situation at work plays out. It might be a relationship you can't force to go the way you want. Name it, even just to yourself, because naming it is the first step to releasing it. And releasing it, redirecting that energy back to what you can actually control, that's not giving up, that's freedom. That's the inner citadel. Here's something that surprises a lot of people when they first discover Stoicism. They come expecting cold, emotionless self-sufficiency, the idea of a Stoic as a kind of stone wall, unmoved, unbothered, disconnected from other people. But that's not what Marcus Aurelius taught at all. In fact, one of his most repeated instructions to himself was this: waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be one. And what did Marcus consider central to being a good man? Kindness. He wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." He wrote, Accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate brings you together. He wrote, and this one is extraordinary. When you wake up in the morning, remind yourself that you were made for working with others, even those who oppose you. Marcus governed an empire. He had the power to do almost anything to anyone. And what he chose, again and again, was to respond to difficulty with patience, to respond to enemies with measured reason rather than rage, to respond to ordinary people with genuine care. This wasn't weakness. This was his most deliberate practice, because Marcus understood something that the modern world desperately needs to hear. Kindness is not naive. It is not passive. It is not the absence of strength. Kindness, chosen consciously in the face of difficulty, is one of the most powerful things a human being can practice. He wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." Simple. Almost brutally simple. But sit with it. How many times today did you say something that wasn't quite true, that was shaded by defensiveness or ego or a desire to win an argument? How many times did you do something that wasn't quite right? Not because you're a bad person, but because the easier path was right there and you took it. Marcus asked himself these questions every day, not to punish himself, but to calibrate, to return to who he wanted to be. And the beautiful thing is, every day offers a new chance. He wrote, "Every day provides its own gifts. Every day, no matter how badly yesterday went, is a new chance to be the person you're capable of being." That's not optimism, that's Stoic realism at its most generous. We've covered a lot of ground today. The morning ritual that prepares you for difficulty, the radical reframe that turns obstacles into opportunities, the urgency of present moment living, the unconquerable fortress of the rational mind, and the profound practical power of kindness. But I want to leave you with one final piece of wisdom from Marcus Aurelius, one that in my view ties everything together. He wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts, not your circumstances, not your achievements, not your bank account or your reputation or how many people know your name. The quality of your thoughts. That's it." And what Marcus spent his entire life doing, in battle, in court, in private, in public, was tending to the quality of his own thinking, questioning it, refining it, holding it to the standard of what a good, wise, just person would think. He was not perfect. He said so himself, constantly falling short, constantly beginning again. But that's exactly the point. The Stoic life is not about arriving at perfection. It's about the practice, the daily, imperfect, honest, courageous practice of becoming better. You don't need to be an emperor to begin. You just need to begin. Maybe tomorrow morning, before the phone, before the noise, 60 seconds of preparation. A quiet acknowledgement that the day will be hard and that you are ready. Maybe the next time something blocks your path, you pause before reacting and ask what this obstacle is trying to teach you. Maybe you look honestly at what's consuming your energy that you cannot control and choose to let it go. Maybe you end tonight by asking, was I kind today? Was I honest? Was I in any meaningful way better than I was yesterday? That's it. That's the whole thing. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the ancient world, asked himself that question every single night. You can too. If this video moved you or shifted something in how you see your day, share it with someone who needs to hear it right now. You know who that person is. And if you want to go deeper into Stoic philosophy, we've got an entire library of videos right here on Wisdom of the Stoics. From Epictetus to Seneca to Zeno, each one designed to bring these ideas off the ancient page and into the reality of your modern life. Hit subscribe if you haven't already, and ring that bell, because these are the kinds of conversations you don't want to miss. I'll leave you with this. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations alone by lamplight in a military tent, never imagining that 2,000 years later, his words would still be reaching people across the world. But they are, because truth doesn't expire, because wisdom doesn't age, because whatever struggle you're carrying right now, the ancient emperor who carried the weight of an empire has something to say to you about it. Go find better days. We'll see you in the next one.